Shabbat Shalom and greetings. Greetings to the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel, the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, taken into captivity because of the sins of our fathers, into slavery, and are now in the four corners of the earth in that captivity. Greetings to you who are hoping for the establishment of the kingdom of Messiah from the Father. Greetings. Greetings also to those who are not of the 12 tribes, but are seeking to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as strangers among the 12 tribes. Greetings to you. Greetings to all who are seeking truth and righteousness and an end to death and pain and sin and suffering on this earth. Greetings. We have been studying Daniel, and we're in a very important chapter today. We're in chapter 9 of Daniel, and we looked first last week at Daniel's repentant prayer, which is a sample prayer for all Israelites especially, and all people in general, you Gentiles as well. It's a sample prayer. It's a sample of repentance, not only for your personal sins, not only for your personal defects of character, but for the sins of your fathers, the sins of your ancestors, the sins of your nation. This is true repentance. And so Daniel showed us that last week. And then last night we started to peel back the layers of the 2300-day prophecy that was given to Daniel in Daniel chapter 8. And Gabriel was explaining the vision that he saw in Daniel 8, that Daniel saw. He was giving Daniel the meaning of that vision, and he neglected purposely to give Daniel the understanding of the 2,300 evenings and mornings. And so here we are in Daniel chapter 9, picking up where Gabriel is interrupting Daniel's prayer of repentance. And he's interrupting it, and he's now going to show Daniel the meaning, the deep meaning of the 2,300 evenings and mornings. Let's start off first with Numbers chapter 14. Numbers chapter 14. In Numbers chapter 14, it is following Numbers 13 and 12, where our fathers were sent into the promised land. They were on the borders, and they were sent into the promised land. They had just gotten out of Egypt just a few weeks before, a few months before, and now they're on the borders of the promised land. And each of the leaders came to Moses, and they asked if it's all right, they'd like to spy out the land. Check it out. So Moses appointed one leader from each tribe, 12 leaders, and they went to spy out the land. Peace, John. And they spied out the land for 40 days. Again, we know the number 40 is a significant number in the Bible. It's a number of testing. So they went and spied out the land for 40 days, and they came back with fruits of the land. And I want you, let's begin this at let's see. Let's go to Numbers chapter 13. Numbers chapter 13. After the 40 days, when they came back, let's start there. Beginning at chapter 13 of Numbers, beginning at verse 23. And they came unto the brook of Eshcol and cut down from thence a branch with one cluster of grapes. And they bare it between two upon a staff. And they brought of the pomegranates and of the figs. The place was called the brook Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes which the children of Israel cut down from thence. And they returned from searching of the land after 40 days. See, this is where we're picking it up right here. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran, to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. And when they told them and said, we came unto the land whither thou sentest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey. This is the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. Moreover, we saw the children of Anak there, and the Amalekites dwelt in the land of the south, and the Hittites, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses. Caleb was of the tribe of Judah. Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it." But the men that went up with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we." And they brought up an evil report of the land, which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, "The land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight." They brought back an evil report. Caleb, though, said, "No, we could take the land." Tribe of Judah, we could take the land. Chapter 14. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron. And the whole congregation said unto them, "Would Yah that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would Yah we had died in this wilderness? And wherefore hath Yahweh brought us unto this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return unto Egypt?" And they said one to another, "Let us make a captain, and let us return to Egypt." Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes. And they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, "The land which we passed to search it is an exceeding good land. If Yahweh delight in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it us, the land which flows with milk and honey. Only rebel not against Yahweh, neither fear ye the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense is departed from them. And Yahweh is with us, fear them not." But all the congregation bade stone them with stones, and the glory of Yahweh appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. So the land was, but the Most High showed them in even deliverance from Egypt. He had showed them in even their deliverance from Egypt that man could not stop him. Yet they forgot that. And they were standing in the midst of the sanctuary that was built, where Yahweh's presence was, where the Ark of the Covenant was, and where the covenant itself was. And they spoke these words of unbelief. And Joshua and Caleb spoke words of faith, saying their defense is departed from them. They are bread for us. Yah wants to give us this land. And for saying that, their brethren wanted to kill them. For speaking the truth, their brethren wanted to kill them. Now, later on, the Most High pronounced his judgment. Notice what he said. Beginning at verse 26. And Yahweh spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, "How long shall I bear with this evil congregation, which murmur against me? I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they have murmured against me. Say unto them, As truly as I live, saith Yahweh, as ye have spoken in my ears, so will I do to you. Your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness, and all that were numbered of you, according to the whole number of from 20 years old and upward, which have murmured against me, doubtless ye shall not come into the land concerning which I swear to make you dwell therein, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, which ye said should be a prey, them will I bring in, and they shall know the land which ye have despised. But as for you, your carcasses, they shall fall in this wilderness, and your children shall wander in the wilderness 40 years, and bear your borders until your carcasses be wasted in the wilderness. After the number of the days in which ye search the land, even 40 days, each day for a year shall you bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise. So here you see that the Most High uttered a word, and he told them 40 days they searched out the land, and he took each day for a year, and he said, you're going to be in the wilderness for 40 years. Same thing happened in Ezekiel chapter 4. Ezekiel chapter 4. Ezekiel chapter 4. Ezekiel 4, beginning at verse 1. The Most High speaking to his prophet. At this point, the children of Israel are in that captivity. They're in Babylon in captivity. The city had not yet been destroyed. The temple had not yet been destroyed. While Ezekiel was in captivity, it was going to be destroyed. But at this moment, it had not been. So now they have been taken into Babylonian captivity. And here Ezekiel's been given the gift of prophecy to speak. Ezekiel is an Israelite. And of course, he is an Israelite and he's a Levite priest. Thou also, beginning of verse 1, thou also, son of man, take thee a tile and lay it upon thee and portray upon it the city, even Jerusalem, and lay siege against it and build a fort against it and cast a mount against it. Set the camp also against it and set battering rams against it round about. Moreover, take thou unto thee an iron pan and set it for a wall of iron between thee and the city. And set thy face against it, and it shall be besieged. Thou shalt lay siege against it. This shall be a sign to the house of Israel. Lie thou also upon thy left side, and lay the iniquity of the house of Israel upon it. According to the number of the days, thou shalt lie upon it. Thou shalt bear their iniquity. For I have laid upon thee the years of their iniquity according to the number of the days. 390 days, so shalt thou bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. And when thou hast accomplished them, lie again on that right side, and thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have appointed thee each day for a year. So again, you can see in days, he's talking about years. You understand? If he says years, it's years. Like in the time when Jeremiah said, you're going to be in Babylon 70 years. They were in Babylon 70 years. But when he uses the term days, it's years. Okay? So here in Daniel chapter 8, which we talked about yesterday, in Daniel chapter 8, Shabbat Shalom, in Daniel chapter 8, verse 14, he said, and he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Okay? Now, the 2,300 days is a result, the end result, again, as we saw in the first two examples, of rebellion of the children of Israel. There's a rebellion of the children of Israel, and the Most High is punishing that rebellion. Us now, are a result of the rebellion of our fathers. Okay? And this 2,300-year prophecy has to do with us. Because we're the end result of the rebellion of our fathers. And we're at the end of that rebellion. And notice again, Deuteronomy chapter 30. We talked about this last night, Deuteronomy chapter 30. And this is what's going on right now. Prophetic utterance from Moses, from the Most High, in Deuteronomy chapter 30. Notice what it said. And it shall come to pass, when all, beginning at verse 1. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, that is us, the blessing, that's Deuteronomy 28, first part, and the curse, that's Deuteronomy 28, the last part, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind. The blessings and the curses shall be called to mind. Shabbat Shalom to everyone in the chat. The blessings and the curses shall be called to mind by the children of Israel. And thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations where Yahweh thy Most High have driven thee. So in our captivity nations, where we have been brought captive, it's going to come to mind the blessings and the curses that come upon us. The last part being the curses. And if you notice, a lot of the awakened Israelites are being awakened because why? they're realizing that the curses of the Israelites can only match us. They do not match Ashkenazis from Europe. They were not taken in chains with around their neck for more than 2,000 years. They did not become the tail. They were not incarcerated. As Deuteronomy 28 says, all these things are going to happen. Okay? We are the only ones. They were not obviously not taken into slave ships. We're the only ones that fit. And so that's what causing people to wake up. It's the curses. And that's what it says right here. And thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, where the Yahweh thy Most High have driven thee, and shalt return unto Yahweh thy Most High. See, we're at the end right now. Shalt return unto Yahweh thy Most High, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee, thou and thy children, with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that then Yahweh thy Most High will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations, with Yahweh thy Most High has scattered thee. Now, this, if you notice, there's no need to worry about whatever the Gentiles are going to do. There's no mention of that. It's us awakening and coming back to our God, and then he says, I'm going to turn your captivity. It's got nothing to do with anybody else's plans. It's got nothing to do with anybody else, what anybody else wants. This is what he's saying to his people that he's going to do, and what's going to happen. And we're already here, as we are, many of us. There's thousands of us all over the earth awakening to who we are. And the awakening is being brought forth in part by the Father putting the Spirit to show us the curses. Okay? Now I want you to notice this part. Verse 7. And Yahweh thy Most High will put all these curses upon thine enemies, on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. You want to know why there's a rise in people pushing verbally, physically, socially pushing the white supremacist agenda? This prophecy is getting ready to be fulfilled. And they only know violence. It's the only way they know how to fight. That's the only way they know how to react to it, attack. And so that's what they do, get guns and attack. But it's not going to help them, because the Most High, the creator of heaven and earth, his word cannot be stopped. He said when he sent out his word, it's going to prosper in the thing where he sent it. It's going to do exactly what he says it's going to do. Nothing can stop that. And so he said, I'm going to bring the seed of Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob back to the land. They're going to remember the curses that came upon them. And by that, they're going to be brought back to me. See? So, but before this, where we are right now, how we got here is what we're talking about in Daniel chapter 9. Okay? That's what we're talking about in Daniel chapter 9. That 2,300 year period explains how we got here. And it's amazing how the foreknowledge of the Most High, the Alpha and Omega part of him that sees everything and has an end to it, and there's a logical conclusion, and it comes to exactly how he says it's going to come. And the reason I say that is because he said we're going to come back to him. He said he's going to bring back his nation again. He said we would forget who we were. He said people would try to hide us. He called us the hidden one. And people, the sons of Yafet, would try to take our place. He showed us all that. It's all here. It's all here. Yafet shall dwell in the tents of Shem. That's what he's trying to do. And then he showed us Hamitic powers having domination of the planet for 2,000 years. And now Yaphetic powers of the Gentiles having domination of the planet Earth for 2,000 years. And now their time is up. Now, being that they have gotten the vast majority, just like the vast majority, as you saw, of the children of Israel, 10 of the 12 leaders wanted to kill Joshua and Caleb, including all the congregation. They wanted to kill these two brothers, because they spoke the truth. That's it is all the time. In all peoples of the earth, the majority are messed up. There's a remnant that the Most High will call. Always. It's never the majority. Ever. There's a minority, a remnant that will belong to him. Okay? It's like that with Israelites, and it's like that with the Caucasians. The majority of Caucasians are going to be destroyed. But there's a remnant that will hear his voice and hear the truth and come to him. And he speaks of them in his word. And now their time is up. Okay? And so at this point, the seal of the 144,000, as you will see, is the only thing that matters to the Most High right now. That's all that matters. He's not even worried about all this other stuff going on. This is Asatan trying to stir stuff up, but it's not going to help him. It's not going to help him. At the end of the day, Messiah is going to appear and establish his kingdom. And when the sons of Yafet come, the Gentiles come to try to take the kingdom, there will be no more. So now, that's the 2,300 days. And as we saw last night, Daniel was frustrated. Daniel was frustrated when he saw everything that was given him in Daniel chapter 8. Remember, he saw this vision. The goat was explained to him. The ram was explained to him. The horn that came out of the ram's head was explained to him. But he was told some things that bothered him. He said that little horn, remember, he said horn, which he had already given, that was already given to him in Daniel 7. So he again, and he understands now what it is. And he says, the little horn, he magnified himself, verse 11 of Daniel 8. He magnified himself even to the prince of the host. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. He said, this heathen, Gentile, was going to take away the whole sanctuary of Israel. Was going to take away Israel. See, the thing is that what made Israel, one of the makes us Israel, aside from the bloodline, is what things were given only to us. There were things that were not given to everybody. Even the 10 Commandments was not given to everybody. If you read them, what does they say? I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Did he do that to the whole world? Or did he do that to just Jacob's children? I am Lord thy God, which I brought thee. That's how he started. And he made this announcement so that over 1 million people standing in a plain can hear it. He said, I am the Lord thy God, which I brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's the first thing he said to all of them. And they heard it. He did not do that to anybody else. He said, remember, Amos, the prophet, he told him, you only have of all the families of the earth. He told David, I'm not giving my statutes and judgments to anybody else, only you. So the sanctuary service that Moses was told to build, he said to Moses, let them make me a sanctuary that I might dwell among them. Israel, let them make me a sanctuary. And he gave him details, candlesticks, table of showbread, altar of incense, altar of sacrifice, ark of the covenant, and then the 2 tables being put in there. He gave him details, very detailed. And he said, this is a pattern of an original, which Hebrews tells us is in the 3rd heaven. So Moses was given a pattern of the one made without hands in the 3rd heaven. And here in Daniel 8, Daniel is being told that whole system getting ready to get wiped away by the Gentiles. And not only that, with the wiping away of that system, what are you doing? You're wiping away Israel. When you're wiping away the covenant, you're wiping away the people to whom the covenant was given. That's why they call us what? The lost tribes. We're not lost. They want us to be. Again, let's look at Psalms. Let's go back to the Psalms. Psalms is chock full of truth, brothers and sisters. It's not just a poetry. It's beautiful, prophetic truth. Psalms 83. Watch this, Psalms 83. Beginning at verse 1. Keep not thou silence, O Yah, Hold not thy peace, be not still, O Yah, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and have consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. That's the desire. They've taken the true Messiah and moved him and replaced him with a Caucasian, long-haired fairy man from Europe. They've taken the Israelite nation and said, no, we're replacing that with some Caucasian people from the Ashkenazi and the Caucasus Mountains in Europe. Japhet in the tents of Shem. That's what we're seeing. We're at the end of it now because the charade is over. The truth is now being revealed. The charade is over. But this is what Daniel saw. He saw the whole economy of Israel wiped away. Not only that, it said, verse 12, and an host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. What does that mean? Because of the transgression. Just like when they rebelled, when our fathers rebelled in Numbers, and they rebelled when they came back saying we can't take the land. Just like when they rebelled, were taken into Babylon, and Ezekiel was told, show the city in the picture and how it's going to be destroyed. And lay on your side, one side 390 days, one side 40 days. And show them each day for a year. You see here, see, a host was given him against the daily sacrifice because of the transgressions. Our fathers transgression by reason of transgression. And they cast the truth to the ground. And in practice and prosper, the power would rise that would prosper in deceit and lies. That was bad. Then he wanted to know how long was this going on. And it's like the Most High read his mind. Verse 13, then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the virgin concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? How long are you going to let them stomp all over the truth like this? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. The cleansing of the sanctuary took place once a year, the 7th month in the Hebrew year, the 10th day of the 7th month, when the high priest went into the most holy place to cleanse the sanctuary of all confessed sin. See, all year, twice a year, there were sacrifices made in Israel, morning and evening sacrifice. Daniel's going to mention the evening sacrifice in Daniel 9. So he said, twice a day, every day, people were confessing sin for the whole nation. At the end of, in 10th, not the end of the year, but in the 7th month and the 10th day of the month, all the spirit that was representing the sins is taken out and the sanctuary is cleansed so that the priest goes in the beginning of a day and stays in there a whole day. And at the end of the day, when the day is over, he comes out and he puts his hand on a scapegoat, taking all the sins out and spiritually putting them on the head of a scapegoat, which is led into the wilderness to die. Okay, so that is a copy of what is actually going on in the third heaven. So this 2,300 days is 2,300 years. And this bothers Daniel as it would anyone that is an Israelite when he sees this. So deception and lies and a whole king and established system would exist for more than 2 millennium and 3 centuries, almost wiping out the whole children of Israel. Combine that with the idea of Japhet dwelling in the tents of Shem, and you understand they're going to replace us, which is what they've tried to do. But you can't replace the chosen. You cannot stop Yah's word. But that's what they believe. So we now in Daniel 9. And Daniel is praying. And let's start there where he's praying and confessing his sin. That's what we kind of went to last night. Verse 20. And whilst I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin, and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before Yahweh my Most High for the holy mountain of my Most High. Yea, whilst I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. So Gabriel was one that was told by the Most High to help Daniel understand the vision that he saw in Daniel chapter 8. Okay, in fact, let's take a look at this in Daniel chapter 8. When Daniel, remember now, in Daniel 8, Daniel was standing beside the river Ulai when he saw this vision. Messiah was there, as you're going to see right here. Notice again, Daniel 8, verse 15 and 16. And it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man, right? So right in front of him is the appearance of a man, right in front of him, right? And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai. So a man is standing in front of him. And while the man is standing in front of him, picture the scene now, he's standing next to a river. And he heard a voice come from between the banks of the river, which means it came from the middle of the river. Someone was speaking to Daniel from the middle of the river. You're going to see in chapter 10, that was Messiah. Okay. Now, and he said, verse 16, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So the man standing in front of him is Gabriel. And Gabriel got a command from the banks, from between the banks of the Ulai. And the command said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So Gabriel proceeds to give Daniel an understanding of Daniel chapter 8, except for the 2,300 days, which Gabriel said, shut that up. First for many days. And Daniel said, afterward, in Daniel chapter 8, at the end of the chapter, verse 6, and he said, that's true, Daniel, what you saw is true. What? Verse 26, and the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days. Afterward, I rose up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. Okay? Now, here we are in Daniel chapter 9, and again, verse 20. And whilst I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before Yahweh my Most High for the holy mountain of my Most High, yea, whilst I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. So that also shows you, of course, that angels can fly and they can look like men. Because he saw him, he said, a man. Then he said, a man, but he said he flew, right? He said, being caused to fly swiftly, touch me about the time of the evening oblation. Now, Daniel was keeping time according to the Israelite method of the morning and evening sacrifice, which we said happened twice a day. He was not in Israel. There was no sacrifice, but that was the time it would have happened had he been there. The sanctuary was destroyed already, and the city was destroyed already. In fact, that's why Gabriel is there, to talk to him about the rebuilding, partly. Okay, now listen, let's continue. Daniel chapter 9, verse 22. Watch what Gabriel says to Daniel. And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. About what? The 2,300 years. Because he did not explain that to him when he left him the last time. Did not explain that to him. He said, I come forth to give you skill and understanding. Not only that, remember, it was shown, Daniel, that the Israelite economy, the whole Israelite system, and the people was going to be wiped away by a power that's a lying power for more than 2 millennium and 3 centuries. So Daniel has to know, what about us? What about us? That's why he was praying so hard. Are we finished? I mean, is that it? Aren't we called by your name yet? Maybe he even said that in the prayer. Aren't we the people called by your name? So now, verse 23. At the beginning of thy supplications, the command came forth. And I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision. So he's telling Daniel, the Most High still loves his people. When you started praying, we were all, the Most High gave me the command, go tell him. Go show him. And he said, I'm come to give you skill and understand. He said, consider the matter. The matter is Israel. The matter is Israel. And the vision, he said, understand the matter, Israel, and consider the vision, the 2,300 years. Okay, so you have 2,300 years. And what's going to happen to Israel? 24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. 70 weeks, he says, are determined. The word determined meaning separate, cut out. Cut out from what? Remember, they're talking about the 2,300 years. So he said 70 weeks or 490 years are separated for the nation of Israel, separated from the 2,300 years. So you have 490 years to get your stuff together, Dan. And again, we brought up Matthew chapter 18. And if you look at Matthew chapter 18, Messiah mentions this. He does it in a low key way. Peter asks him a question, and look how he answers it. Matthew chapter 18. Matthew 18, verse 21. Matthew 18, verse 21. Notice what he says. Then came Peter to him and said, Master, how oft shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Till 7 times? So my brother sin against me and I forgive him give him 7 chances? Yahushua said unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. 70 times 7 is 490. 70 weeks or 490 years is determined upon thy people. Okay? So he's saying, I'm giving y'all this time, this 490 years to prepare. And also notice he said in that to anoint the most holy. He's telling that within this time frame, Messiah is going to come. And y'all have to be ready to meet Messiah. Wait. Where are we at right now? Aren't we being prepared to meet Messiah? As we know, we don't have to even read prophecy to know our people failed, right? They weren't ready to meet Messiah when he appeared the first time. We already know that now. And in fact, Gabriel is going to tell Daniel that right here in chapter 9. The people are going to fail. Okay? Then he's going to go into details of how salvation is going to come to us in Daniel 10, 11, and then finally in 12. Okay? And it's all based on this 2,300 year period. All right? So now he tells Daniel when the 2,300 year period begins. This is an important thing. I mean, it could be any 2,300 year period, right? So he wants to know when does it begin? Because in knowing the start of it, he will also know the end of it, right? So now, Daniel chapter 9, verse 25, he says, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So out of the 490 years, Messiah will appear in the 483rd year. He said 7 weeks and 60. 7, 60 is 60. Okay. 67. 67 plus 2 is 69. So he said 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. In the 69th week, Messiah is going to appear. That's 483 years from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem. So when the commandment went forth to restore and build Jerusalem, that's the date that you start to count. Okay? That's the date you start to count. Now, let's take a look at this. Ezra. In the book of Ezra, it goes into the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem. In the book of Ezra, now I want to separate. There were 3 commandments given. One was to go back and rebuild the temple, and that was given by Cyrus the Persian. Again, that's 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 23. Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath Yahweh Most High of heaven given me, and he has charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? Yahweh his God be with him. Let him go up. So that's to rebuild the temple, okay? And they needed a backup command to rebuild the temple because they started the work to rebuild it, and then it was stopped, okay? So let's take a look at that. And so now Darius made a second decree about rebuilding the temple in Ezra chapter 6. Notice Ezra chapter 6, beginning at verse 1. Ezra chapter 6, beginning at verse 1. Then Darius the king made a decree, and search was made in the house, and arose where the treasures were laid up in Babylon. And there was found in Achmatha, in the palace that is in the province of the Medes, a roll. And therein was a record thus written: in the first year of Cyrus the king, the same Cyrus the king made a decree concerning the house of Yah at Jerusalem. Let the house be builded, and the place where they offered sacrifices, and let the foundations thereof be strongly laid, and the height thereof was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 80 cubits. So he found that the work was stopped because the enemies of the Israelites complained about them rebuilding this temple. They were scared of that, and the work was stopped. So then Cyrus was now dead and gone. So now Darius said, well, let's look through the records. He found Cyrus's command in the records, and that's what we just read. And they go into that, and let's go for verse 4. And with 3 rows of great stones, a row with new timber, and let the expenses be given out of the king's house. And also let the golden and silver vessels of the house of Yah, which Nebuchadnezzar took forth out of the temple, which is at Jerusalem, and brought them unto Babylon, be restored, and brought again unto the temple, which is at Jerusalem, every one to his place, and to place them in the house of Yah. Now, therefore, Tatnai, the governor beyond the river, and Shethar-Boznai, and your companions, and the Apharsachites, which are beyond the river, be ye far from thence. Let the work of this house of Yah alone. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews build this house of Yah in his place. Moreover, I make a decree what ye shall do to the elders of these Jews for the building of the house, that the king of the king's goods and of the tribute beyond the river forthwith expenses be given unto these men, that they be not hindered. He made a second decree to make sure that the house of Yah was going to be built. But now there was a third decree for something. Okay, let's take a look in the same chapter 6 of Ezra. Ezra chapter 6. I'm going to begin at verse 14. And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Edo, and they builded and finished it. So they finished the temple according to the commandment of the Most High of Israel, according to the commandment of Cyrus and Darius. And then they mention Artaxerxes. What did Artaxerxes command for? Let's read verse 15. And this house was finished on the 3rd day of the month of Adar, which is the 6th year of the reign of Darius. So they had 3 kings: Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes. The house was finished under Darius, right? But then there was a command from Artaxerxes. What was that for? Artaxerxes' command, which is given in chapter 7, is the command to rebuild Jerusalem, to begin with the wall. That's where Nehemiah comes in and builds the wall, right? Because they start to build the wall. Okay, so now they in chapter 7, verse 11, Now, this is the copy of the letter that King Artaxerxes gave unto Ezra the priest, the scribe, even the scribe of the words of the commandments of Yahweh and his statutes to Israel. Artaxerxes, king of kings, unto Ezra the priest, a scribe of the law of the Most High, having perfect peace. And at such a time I make a decree that all day of the people of Israel and of his priests and Levites in my realm, which are minded of their own free will to go up to Jerusalem, go with thee. So now, and then he later on, he give them money to rebuild the wall and to hire magistrates. He did all of that for them so that they can rebuild the city. And that command was given, historically speaking, in the fall of 457 BC. The fall, Artaxerxes' command, 457 BC. So now we have started of the 2,300 years. We have started 457 BC. Okay, everybody? Okay, so we got a start date of the command to start. That's the start of 2,300 years. Now, if you take 2,000, well, first Daniel was told that Messiah was going to appear 483 years later. 3 years before we get started here on the math. We're going to do a little math. Don't be scared. We're going to do a little math now. All right. Now, I want to understand they were following at the time of Messiah the Roman calendar, not the Gregorian Roman calendar. That came later. They were following the Julian calendar. Okay. They were following the Julian calendar. Now, on the Julian calendar, when they switched from BC to AD, they didn't call it that. We call it before and Anno Demi or whatever. They did not have a year zero. No year zero in the Julian calendar. I'm just trying. All right. So there's no year zero. And now on the mathematical number line, if you're going mathematical number line and you start at -10 and you go to +10, you're going to go -10, -9, -8, all the way down -1. Then you're going to go to 0. Then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So there's a 0 on the mathematical number line. But in terms of years, there is no year 0. All right. There's no year 0. So when you get to 1 BC, you don't go to 0, you go to 1 AD. Okay? I want to make sure everybody understands it because that's important when we get ready to do this math. So there's no year 0. So now, 457 BC, Messiah was going to appear 483 years, if you have one, minus 457. You're going to come up with 26. 483 minus 457 is 26. On a mathematical number line. But we also just said there is no year 0. So if there's no year 0, you would be where? 27. Does that make sense? You would not be in AD 26. You would be in AD 27. Everybody got me? I just make sure you understand. So they started at 457 BC with a decree from Artaxerxes to restore and build Jerusalem. They went 483 years until Messiah. That was AD 27. Now, there's some significant things that Messiah said to let you know what time it was. Okay. Now, let's look at Mark first. Mark chapter 1. Mark chapter 1. Watch this. Mark chapter 1. Going to begin at verse where John was talking, Gospel of Mark, John the Baptist was talking, beginning at verse 8. And I'm going to read down to verse 15. I indeed have baptized you with water, but he shall baptize you with the Holy Ghost. And it shall come to pass in those days that and it came to pass in those days that Yahushua came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized of John in Jordan. And straightway coming up out of he saw the heavens opened and the Spirit like a dove descending upon, and there came a voice from heaven saying, "Thou art my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." This was a significant event. And immediately the Spirit driveth him into the wilderness, and he was there in the wilderness 40 days, tempted of Satan, and was with the wild beasts, and angels ministered unto him. Now, after that, John was put in prison, Yahushua came to Galilee, preaching the gospel of the kingdom of Yah and saying, what did he say? The time is fulfilled. The kingdom of Yah is at hand. Repent ye and believe the gospel. The time is fulfilled. This was AD 27 right here. Okay. Also, another significant event that Messiah made an announcement that lets you know what time it was. Luke chapter 4. Luke chapter 4. Same, it gives you the same thing. He went to the wilderness, he come out the wilderness, and then he comes back to Nazareth where he was, right? Now let's go from verse 14 of Luke chapter 4, and let's go down from verse 14 down to verse 21. And Yahushua returned in the power of the Spirit into Galilee, and there went out a fame of him through all the region round about, and he taught in their synagogues, being glorified of all. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of Yahweh is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. And verse 19 is very significant. To preach the acceptable year of Yahweh. And he closed the book and gave it again to the minister and sat down. And the eyes of all them that were in the synagogue were fastened on him. And he began to say unto them, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. What Messiah was announcing, if you look it up in Isaiah, is Isaiah 61. What Isaiah 61 is announcing is a year jubilee. A jubilee year is every 50th year in the Israel economy. Every 50th year is the jubilee. Okay, all debts are forgiven, and all land. See, all debts were forgiven every 7 years, but in the 50th year, not only are all debts forgiven, but all land is restored to the original tribes. So if some knucklehead uncle, Bino, and gambler and lost all the land of his family, in the year of the Jubilee, that land was brought back to his family. Okay, restored, all land restored. And that day of the 50th year is the Day of Atonement, same day. So in other words, at the end of the Day of Atonement, in the 50th year, everything's restored. And then 5 days later is the Feast of the Tabernacles, where they start rejoicing in Jerusalem. Okay, now this was AD 27. He said the time is fulfilled, 483 years, AD 27. That's the beginning of his ministry. Okay, that's the beginning of Messiah's ministry, the fall of AD 27. He said this is fulfilled. Okay, this is fulfilled. So that being the case, it was fulfilled. So now you know that the 27th year of every century is what? It's a jubilee. Now we're not in the land the Most High marks it still. Okay, and this 2027 that's coming up in 7 years is the 40th Jubilee for when Messiah made that announcement. It's the 40th one. The 10th day of the 7th month in 2027 is the 40th Jubilee. Okay? And I want to tell you something. That's the last one before the kingdom. That's the last one before the kingdom. Okay? It's the last one. That's why I say to you, between that time and 5 years later, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, this thing is over. This thing is over. Okay? Now back to Daniel chapter 9. So now he's telling him in 483 years, Messiah is going to come from 457 BC. Now, Daniel had not been alive. Daniel was not alive when Artaxerxes made that decree. Daniel died in the first, when Cyrus said, go back and build the temple. So he was not around when Darius said, he reestablished that command. And then Artaxerxes said, go back and rebuild the city now. He was not around but he was told that this was the sign. So now the people reading this, that's why Messiah referenced. Remember what Messiah referenced when he said, remember the abomination that maketh desolate, spoken of by Daniel the prophet? Let him that readeth understand. They were supposed to know this already. So when that decree went forth from Artaxerxes, they knew when Messiah was coming. And that's why the night that the wise men came from the east and told the people in Jerusalem, we have seen Messiah's star in the east, the King of the Jews. Where is he that is born King of the Jews? We have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. And the Bible says that Herod and all Jerusalem was troubled, and they wanted to kill the baby Messiah. Okay? Just like they wanted to stone Joshua and Caleb. So we know they failed, right? So now, let's continue though. Daniel chapter 9. Notice what he says. Daniel chapter 9. Okay, from verse 25, actually from verse 26. Now, I'm going to start at verse 25 again. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again and the wall, even in troublous times. Now, I want to also stress this. Even though the wise men from the east saw the star of that represented the birth of Messiah, this prophetic utterance does not stress the birth of the Messiah. It's stressing the ministry of the Messiah. This 483 years is not talking about when he was born. It's talking about when he began his ministry, when he was baptized and began his ministry. Now we know that Messiah's ministry lasted how long? Messiah's ministry lasted how long? We know it lasted 3.5 years. 3.5 years. That's how long his ministry was before he was crucified. All right. So let's let the Bible tell us about that. Daniel chapter 9. After 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. So wait. Let's take over. There's a lot being said here. So we got to take this in. So he said after 62 weeks, that's 62 weeks. Now, remember what he said in the previous verse. 7 weeks, 62 weeks, right? 7 weeks, 62 weeks. So why did he just say 62? First he said 7 weeks, which is 7. 27 plus 2 is 69. But now he's only saying 62. Why did he do that? The first 7 weeks, which is the first 49 years, was spent building the temple. Finishing the building. They got the framework together, but they didn't actually finish it till 49 years was over. They started building it under Darius's decree, and they got the framework together, but it wasn't complete yet. They put sacrifice in, but it wasn't complete yet. It's like the framework was done. Remember when the scribes and Pharisees came to Messiah, and Messiah said, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'm going to raise it up." Remember their answer to him? They said 46 years when we took building this thing, and you going to raise it up in 3 days? Remember that? So that's part of the 49 years that this is talking about. So the first 7 weeks was the building and complete building and restoring of the temple. Then the next part was Messiah was going to appear. All that starting in 457. So even though they got the foundation laid and they had part of the temple built under Darius, it was still being continuing after that because there was a lot to it, obviously. So now Messiah, he said he's going to be cut off, right? He's going to be cut off. And it says that the people of the prince that shall come, the people of the prince that shall come, that's what he mentioned of the little horn, the people of the little horn of Daniel chapter 8. Remember he said, what did he say? Daniel chapter 8 say, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. The prince that shall come, that's that one he talked about in Daniel 8, the one that shall go by deceit, by craft. He said he's going to destroy. He said he's going to destroy the city and the sanctuary. He's going to destroy the city and the sanctuary. That's the Romans, and we know they did that. Okay, we know they did. They leveled Jerusalem in AD 70 and they destroyed the sanctuary. We know that. They took away the whole Israelite economy because at that point, the whole southern kingdom of Judah was taken into captivity. And that's what Messiah said. He says they shall be led captive into all nations. That's what he said in Luke chapter 21, verse 24. He said, wrath is going to be on his people and they're going to be led captive into all nations. That's where we are right now. All this is part of the 2,300 years of Japhet domination. Japhet domination. Okay. Now, verse 27. Now, he talked about 69 weeks, right? 483 years. Verse 27. And he shall confirm the covenant, that is Messiah, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Now, confirm the covenant. That's the covenant made to Israel. Again, this is also confirming what we keep saying. Messiah came for Israel. He said he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. The covenant is the covenant made to Israel, right? For all Israel with the statutes and judgment. Wait, Malachi chapter 4. Malachi chapter 4. Last chapter, the last book of the Old Testament. Notice what it says. Verse 4. Remember ye the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded him in order for all Israel with the statutes and judgments. Behold, I send you Elijah the prophet before the great and dreadful day of Yahweh come. See, so the covenant is what was given through Moses and what he gave to the nation of Israel in terms of, it's called the 10 Commandments, but it's the covenant. Again, let's look at another witness because a lot of people don't know this and they get it confused. So let's take a look at Exodus chapter 34, when Moses came down from the mountain after the 40 days that he had spent with the Most High, getting the statutes and commandments. Exodus chapter 34, I'm going to begin at verse 27. Exodus 34, 27. And Yahweh said unto Moses, write thou these words, for after the tenor of these words I have made a covenant with thee and with Israel. And he was there with Yahweh 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water. And he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. That's the covenant. Okay? He wrote the covenant, the 10 Commandments. And the Bible says that he had the same covenant. Now, we show that, well, let's let the Bible show. This is Psalm 105. Watch Psalm 105. Psalm 105. Beginning at verse 8. Psalm 105, beginning at verse 8. He hath remembered his covenant forever. The word which he commanded to 1,000 generations, which covenant he made with Abraham and his oath unto Isaac, watch, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an everlasting covenant. See, so the 10 Commandments is commonly referred to 10 Commandments, but that's what the Most High made with Israel as a covenant. And the promise was, I'm going to bless you and give you this land. You keep my covenant. That's the exchange. Keep my covenant, and I'm going to bless you and give you this land. I'm going to be with you. But you keep my covenant. That's the covenant. Okay? So when people talk about we're under a new covenant, they have no idea what they're talking about. Covenant never changes. It's renewed. It says, I'm going to write my law in your hearts. That's the new covenant. I'm going to write the law in the hearts. Yeah, exactly, Mark. And exactly. He was on the run for 40 days and he did not eat or drink. 40. So just like Messiah, 40. Just like the Israelites went into the wilderness, went into the promised land, check it out, 40. It's a significant number. And the Bible actually tells us about that, Deuteronomy chapter 8, about 40. Watch, Deuteronomy chapter 8. Deuteronomy chapter 8. Verse 1 and 2, watch. All the commandments which I command thee this day, ye shall observe to do, that ye may live and multiply and go in and possess the land which Yahweh sware unto your fathers. Watch this. Thou shalt remember all the way which Yahweh thy Most High led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and to prove thee. The word prove means test. To know what was in thy heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. And he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger and fed thee with manna which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man does not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of Yahweh doth man live. That's why Messiah is called the Word made flesh. When he says the Word, specific, it's the covenant. He's the covenant made flesh. That's why he's without sin, because the covenant is a representation of Most High's righteousness. Messiah is a representation of the Father's righteousness. Okay? That's why he calls it his son. And he says, I have magnified my word above all my name. Okay, that's the covenant between him and Israel. So now he tells Daniel, he says in Daniel chapter 9, the city and the sanctuary are going to be destroyed by the Romans. And they're going to take away the covenant. They're going to take away the sanctuary service. They're going to take away Messiah. And they're going to rule for 2,300 years. In verse 27, he says, Messiah's mission is to confirm the covenant. So obviously, he's not confirming the covenant with Gentiles because it wasn't made with them. He said, I'm confirming the covenant. And that's why, again, we look at Isaiah chapter 8. Notice what it says, Isaiah chapter 8. Couple of things in Isaiah 8, verse 16. Bind up the testimony and seal the law among my disciples. This is a prophetic utterance about Messiah. Isaiah chapter 8, verse 16. Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples. Then he gives you the test of truth in verse 20 of the same Isaiah 8. To the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there is no light in them. Okay, that's how important this is to the Most High and to us as Israelites. Okay, so he shall, in verse 27 of Daniel 9, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. That is 7 years. So 80, 27, 483. You add 7 years to 43. What do you have? 490. Wasn't that the time Gabriel said? You have 70 weeks, my friend. You have people have 70 weeks, my brother, to get their act together. Messiah going to appear. You guys got to be ready. He's giving you this 70 weeks. That represented a time of probation for Israel to be able to remain in their land. Obviously, we failed. And guess what? Guess what? We're not on the land anymore. But the promise of the Most High through Messiah is to bring us back to the land, which is why you see in Revelation chapter 21, the New Jerusalem will come out of heaven back on the land. And Zechariah say it comes back on the land where the Mount of Olives is. Okay? And we're going to keep the Feast of the Tabernacles, which is the last. See, that's the last feast that has to be fulfilled with Messiah. When I say fulfill, I mean Messiah does something to match each feast. He died and rose again. That's the Passover. He was the Passover lamb. He died and rose again. Feast of unleavened bread. Put away sin. Die and rose again. Then on Pentecost, the first fruits. Remember in Matthew 27, people rose with him. It said there were saints that rose with him, and he took them with him. That's the first fruits. Pentecost and early rain, the outpouring of the Father's Spirit on the disciples in Jerusalem. Pentecost. Okay. Then there's the Day of Atonement, 2,300 years. There's a long time. See, he said the time is long. So that first year, you had Messiah, death, resurrection. You had Pentecost. But then 2,300 years are going to go by before you get to the Day of Atonement. And then after the Day of Atonement, 5 years, because it's 5 days. The Day of Atonement is the 15th day of the 7th month. I'm sorry. No, excuse me. I'm sorry. The Day of Atonement is the 10th day of the 7th month. The Feast of Tabernacles is the 15th day of the 7th month. So here, this Jubilee coming up in AD 27, in the 10th day of the 7th month of AD 27, that is the Hebrew month. That's the last Jubilee, and that's a day of atonement that's finished. I believe the latter rain is going to fall that year. I believe that the latter rain of the seal of the 144,000 will be complete that year. That's my belief. And within 5 years, and I think within 5, like it's not going to be 5 years. Within 5 years, Messiah is going to return. Okay, this thing is about over. It's really wrapping up. That's why you're seeing all of the hubbub. You're seeing all the intensity. Everything is more intense, brother. You're seeing it. I mean, you don't have to believe anything, but you can see everything's more intense on this planet if you're paying any attention at all. Everything from people's passions, people's anger, people's excitement, the weather, the storms, the disasters, everything is multiplied and more intensified. Okay, and so it's wrapping up. It's coming right now. We're here. All right, and so we're in this last stretch right here, this last preparation, this last 7 years of preparation, and I believe the seal will be given. Seal the law among my disciples. That it's going to be given because there's a work that needs to be done. That's a 3.5 year work, starting, I believe, in 2027. Now I could be wrong. You know why? Because it could happen before that. I'm saying 2027 and 2032. It could be before that. He could cut it short before that. That could be completely off. But I know it ain't gonna last longer than that. I know it. Okay. So now he said in verse 27 of Daniel, he said, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, now when you take 7, that's 1 week, 7 years. Okay, 7, 1 week, prophetically speaking. In the midst of the week, when you divide 7 into 2, what do you get? 3.5. You understand? So you get 3.5 years. You divide 7 into 2. So now, if Messiah started his ministry in AD 27 in the fall, at the Jubilee, the 10th day of the 7th month, you take 5 years because in the midst of the week, what is he going to do? He shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. That's what it said. Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. Daniel 9:27. He shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. What does that mean? If he's the Passover lamb, once he pays the penalty of the sins of his people, there's no need to sacrifice any more lambs. He is the lamb. He shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. That's why when the day he died, when he gave up the ghost, the Bible says the veil of the temple was rent in twain from top to bottom, because there was a veil between the outer court and the altar of sacrifice. So when the priest killed that lamb for the Passover, the official, and gave up the ghost and said, it is finished, that veil was torn, representing the fact that that lamb is no longer needed because the real lamb had died. Of course, at that moment, none of the Israelites understood that. But we understand it here. It says, in the midst of the week, he shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. 3.5 years. So you start in the 7th month, the 10th day, AD 27. Then you go AD 28, AD 29, AD 30. 6 months later, the spring of AD 31. The spring of AD 31, at the Passover, is when Messiah was sacrificed. Okay, in the midst of the week, he shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. So now Daniel is being told Messiah is going to appear. He's going to be sacrificed in AD 31. The Romans are going to destroy the temple, and they're going to destroy the city, and desolations are determined. Telling them the whole thing. Okay? Verse 27, one more time. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of the week, he shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So now he takes away the sacrifice. Now, this is different than when the Bible says the Romans take away the daily sacrifice. It's different. When the Romans take away the daily sacrifice, it's representing the Israelite economy, because the daily sacrifice was given to Israel. So when it says he shall take away the daily sacrifice, as far as the little horn, he's destroying the nation. He's destroying the economy of the nation, and he's scattering the people, and replace it with abomination that maketh desolate. That's the Roman version of Israel, of religion. The Romans have a version of Israel religion. It's called Christianity. Do you realize that in the Catholic Church, they have what? Priests? Do they not? And they have a Holy Father that they confess their sins to, called the Pope. That's the abomination that maketh desolate. Okay? And outside of that church came forth all the Christian churches, right? The original name of all the Christian churches, tell me if you find different, but during they called it the the Reformation. It was called the Protestant Reformation. Now think about that. Protestant. What were they protesting? They were protesting the Catholic Church. And what was the Reformation? Reform. They were trying to reform the Catholic Church. So they were protesting the Catholic Church and trying to reform the Catholic Church. That was thousands of years, a couple thousand years ago. Okay? More than 1,500 years ago. So, as we stand here today, has those Protestant churches reformed the Catholic Church? Were they successful in their attempt to reform the Catholic Church? Because you're only going to have one thing or another. Either they're going to be successful or they're going to fail. If they fail to reform the Catholic Church, what happened then? Catholic Church still owns them. That's why the Bible says she is the mother of harlots. She had children and abominations of the earth. All Christianity is under the Roman Catholic banner. They might, even the people may not know it. Rome knows it though. And we'll talk more about that when we get into chapter 11, but they've taken over every Christian church. Every 501c3 religion is controlled by Rome. Everyone. Every 501c3 religion is controlled by Rome. Okay? Everyone. So that is the Bible calls it the strong. I will send you strong delusion that you should believe a lie. It's Christianity. I want to tell you, in all the Old Testament, in all the prophets that you will read, and again, I read this thing through 17, 18 times. I can't remember now. But I read the Bible through cover to cover umpteen times. I have never seen, and never will see, the Most High give a name to a religion of his people. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. They have his name. He said, my name. He said, you are called by my name. That's what he said. You're not called Baptist or Pentecostal or Jehovah's Witness. He said, you called by my name, Yah. And you are a nation, Israel. And I made with you, he said, we just read it in Psalm 105, an everlasting covenant. You're called by my name. If my people, right? What's that? 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. So Messiah came to confirm the covenant. That is the new covenant that all these Christians try to call their churches, new covenant churches. Now, he's confirming the covenant with Israel. That's the new covenant. He's renewing the covenant. When we say he's confirming the covenant for 1 week, he's renewing it. So 3.5 years or halfway through that 1 week, he paid the penalty for sin. But there's still another 3.5 years left. We're going to talk about that after the break. We're going to talk about that after the break. So it's now 12:50, Bathaman. It's 12:50. I'm going to stop here and take a break and come back at 1:20. Come back at 1:20. We'll start another video, another live stream at 1:20. So we're going to stop. For those of you that was able to stick around for this one, Most High bless you and keep you and bless you on this Sabbath and prepare you to receive of his seal and to meet his son in peace. Shalom.